And we're live.
Good evening, people, and this is Brian Hunter here with Real Men Conversations, and my guest here today is King David Lang. How's it going, King?
It's going good, going good. Things are getting better. And we're here to talk about one of the reasons things are getting better, at least from my end.
Okay, just go ahead and start it off, my good man.
Okay, well, I know you brought me here. You wanted to discuss vaccines, pros, or vaccine for the COVID 19 virus, pros and cons. I'm definitely on the pro side, so I will be taking that position. I actually did go ahead and get my first shot. I got my first shot on March 18th. According to the research, as of yesterday, because we're recording this on April 2nd, as of yesterday, I was 80% protected after taking my first shot. My second shot will come April 20th, and that would provide me with protection going into like 2 weeks after that. You're considered fully vaccinated. So basically, if you get your first shot of the two-shot vaccines, there's two-shot vaccines. There's the Pfizer vaccine, there's the Moderna vaccine. I have taken the Moderna vaccine. You're considered fully vaccinated 6 weeks after your first shot, assuming you get at least 2 weeks after you get your second shot. So yes, I am that far in the process where I'm just beyond the 80% considered protection. I still have one more shot to go, but and then also there's the Johnson and Johnson shot. That's the one shot that a lot of people might be hearing about. It does not provide quite as good protection as the two-shot vaccines. Are they also, although they are testing it out uh, eventually to see if maybe if you get two doses of that vaccine, it will be
Yeah,
just as effective. Although it is the Johnson and Johnson vaccine is a traditional vaccine like we're used to getting for like measles and stuff like that, where they take a inactivated uh, virus and then they put the vaccine in that, and that's how it's delivered to the body. The Moderna and the Pfizer vaccines are like considered newer technology. They just take a piece of like the genetic code or the DNA of the disease and use that to uh, raise immunity that way. All the vaccines attack spike proteins, but like the older vaccines, the Johnson and Johnson, which is based on the older technology, it does it the more traditional way using an inactivated virus. Whereas the two new vaccines, the Pfizer and the Moderna vaccine, they use the genetic code that way to do it. But either way it goes, it's all about. So when if the virus does enter your body, the immune system will know how to attack it. So that's how the vaccines work. Each vaccine has its own way of doing it. Although, like I mentioned before, Moderna and Pfizer are new school using DNA, basically genetic code, to attack it, whereas the Johnson Johnson virus uses the older, more traditional method of just using an inactivated virus to sort of deliver similar message to it. But so far, based on research they've done, the two shot vaccines are more effective as far as providing full protection. You consider anywhere from in the high 90s, uh, the mid rather the mid 90s to low 90s if you're fully vaccinated with those two vaccines. If you get your two shots for that, in fact, since they do the research for the vaccines, there's different levels of protection. The two-shot vaccines, once you're 2 weeks after your second shot, you are considered 100% protected from the most severe uh, cases of the virus. That means no matter what, everybody they've done and studied on, if they've been given the vaccine, they have been protected from the most serious consequences of the virus. That means nobody has died, nobody has had these really terrible long-term effects that we hear about related to COVID. If you get the two-shot vaccine and you're 2 weeks past your second shot, uh, if in the odd event that you do get it, there is a small percentage of people that do get the disease, even if they're fully vaccinated, but none of those have died. So that the neighborhood of people who can still get it after considered fully vaccinated is in the neighborhood of anywhere from maybe 8 to 10%, somewhere in that low neighborhood. So that means you'll still be protected. You won't have the worst consequences if you do manage to be part of the small percent that does get it, you won't have the most severe symptoms with the two-shot vaccines. And that goes for both of the two-shot vaccines that I mentioned. Again, Moderna, Pfizer. Whereas on the Johnson and Johnson one-shot vaccine, because they have not tested it for two shots yet, uh, they only have the full studies on it for one shot. You were considered 85% protected from the most serious consequences after the one shot once it's fully kicked in, and you're considered not. I take that back. Yes, you're 85% protected against the most serious consequences, and you're two-thirds protected anywhere from where I say from two-thirds to 72% protected from getting it at all. So the protection level is higher with the two-shot vaccines, and you have a higher percentage of not getting the worst symptoms with the two-shot vaccines. But if you don't have access to the two-shot vaccines, the Johnson Johnson, it's not a bad vaccine. It's just it's not as good as the new ones. Because traditionally, the Johnson and Johnson vaccine, if you had a vaccine that was going to protect you two-thirds from the disease, and then like 85% from the worst consequences for a flu shot, that would be wonderful because most flu shots any given year only protect you 40 to 60%. So I don't want anyone who's reluctant to say, no, I'm not going to get that one because it doesn't work. It works. It just doesn't work as well as the other one. So if I had a choice, I would get one of the two-shot vaccines, but the Johnson and Johnson one is not a bad choice based on the statistics and information we've been provided so far. And I just want to say for the record, since we are American-based show, I know technically on the internet you have access to information from all over the world. Uh, we are based in America, the United States, so I'm discussing the vaccines that have been approved in America. There are a few other vaccines throughout the world. China has their own, Russia has their own. There's the one in Europe. They have a little bit more wider spread use there, but that one has not been approved there. I don't want to speak as much about those just because I'm not as familiar with it. I know the European one whose name is slipping my mind off the top of my head. It was temporarily recalled for a small percentage of cases that had the negative reactions to it. But that percentage of people who had the negative reaction, it was like blood clotting related issues. That percentage of people was actually probably lower than you'd expect if you just had a random selection of population. So it feels, in like I said, I'm not the true expert on this, but it feels like it was a little bit overblown. But sometimes when something new, you want to be a little bit overprotective as opposed to underprotective, because that's been a big problem with the COVID situation last year. People were not cautious enough, and then it led to problems. So I think in this case they went a little bit overboard, but I would still rather them be a little bit more protected and say, hey, let's look at this. Let's make sure we have the right information on this before we give this to any more people. And that's what they did. But they have I think as of the recording of this, they have allowed it back on the market, particularly for like the most vulnerable populations. So oh yeah, that was something else I should mention too. The one of the two-shot vaccines is slightly lower protection rate for people over 65, but they're still a high risk category. So if you think about it, if you're over age 65, you pretty much have a higher risk for anything, and you definitely have a higher risk for that. So the the protection is still, I think, in the 85% range for the, even though it was like 100% from the worst symptoms. I think it was like something like 85% for the oldest population as opposed to something in 90 to 100%. So I did want to clear that up just in case we do have any older listeners. But still, if you're in the high risk group, that means you need it more, not less. Anyway, I don't want to hijack the whole show, so I'm gonna let you go ahead, and if you got any questions, you can feel free to ask me questions, or if you got anything you want to chime in, feel free.
Okay, well, as far as all of that goes, I'm I'm 100% behind you, and I know you're a man who believe in the science, not just conspiracy, not just rumor, and you don't operate out of fear. So, with all these things going on here in America and just all around the world and everything, what made you say, you know what, I'm going to get vaccinated, and I don't care what anyone else says.
Okay, you definitely raised an excellent point because uh, there's different communities. We're both black men. If you're watching the video, that's kind of obvious to you. I know there's a lot of people in the black community that are reluctant to get the vaccine. there's valid reasons for anybody to be skeptical of any new medicine coming from quote big pharma or whatever else. I understand that. There's a doubly, or maybe even triply reason for anybody in the black community to say, hey, I don't want to trust, the government when they tell me to do this, or I don't want to trust the companies when they tell me to do this. I understand there's been a long history of inappropriate experimentations, destructive behaviors, even poisoning black people, whether it be with radiation or all kinds of medicine, or the Tuskegee experiment, which was an experiment. They just literally let uh, people have untreated diseases. So I understand the reluctance, or even people not even the black community. There's a lot of white people that are concerned about slightly different reasons. They're concerned that they're going to put a microchip in it. I don't understand that level of lack of understanding. But there are people, that say, "Hey, I want to take a break. I want to get more information about it." The people that say, "I want to get more information about it," I'm completely understanding that that's reasonable. When there's ever something that new comes out, it makes sense to say maybe, hey, maybe I won't run out and get it immediately. Like whenever the new Xbox or the new PlayStation comes out, that's not going in my body. But when it first comes out, I'm like, no, I'm not getting it at first. I want to see how it works in the real world. I want to make sure they work the kinks and bugs out. So I understand that. When they came out with the vaccines, a lot of people were concerned that they were rushed. Um, Now, I had that same concern because I was like, okay, yeah, this is kind of quick for a vaccine to come out, but it's not like they started off from zero. If they had come up with something completely new or completely brand new ideas, I would be concerned. But when you do your research on it, you learn that they did not just come out with a new thing that was all together. They've been doing research on coronaviruses going back to SARS, because technically this COVID-19 is a SARS virus. One of the short versions of the name actually has SARS in it. It's not the same as the SARS disease we had, a decade ago, but it is a SARS type virus. So we had all the research that we had done on it then. We've had research done on flu viruses and vaccines. We've had all sorts of DNA testing and all sorts of research going into that. So they built the two-shot versions of the vaccine on all its previous information. So it's not like they just came up with it last year and then boom, it's out. They've been studying these diseases and they've been studying the human genome. They've been studying everything for like a decade now, not even including the traditional work on vaccines. So it's not like they just like came out with it and say, hey, we got this magic, it works. They have to run through various clinical trials before they could bring it out. So that means it's been studied on thousands of people before these vaccines came out. They actually do have to report, what kind of negative incidents happen. There's been a small handful of people like that have had like anaphylactic shock click in, and that's why when you go get your shot, they have to check you for 15 minutes. Most likely, if you're going to have a bad reaction to the vaccine, it'll be within that 15-minute range. They want to make sure that if they do have to hit you with an EpiPen, because that's the way they treat it if if you have a anaphylactic shock. They want to make sure that you're still there and you're being monitored. But aside from that, there's been very, very few negative consequences from these vaccines. The main side effects are like you might have a day or two where you feel tired. There's soreness in the arm from the shots. I experienced a little bit of that. It was like a little bit sore the day I got it. It felt a little bit worse the day after that, but pretty much every day since then, it's been almost nothing. So, uh, I my experience seems to be very, very similar to what people in my friend group who have had the shots experience. There's a few people that might be a little bit more tired than others that I've seen, done some research on and I've seen on the internet. They've had like a little bit more fatigue based off of it, but it's not killed anybody. It's not the consequences of getting this disease and having the worst symptoms are much worse than getting, have a day or two of, of a bad reaction. And and the thing about it is, it's not just about how it affects you, because obviously there are plenty of people in the world be like, I'll just risk it. If I get the disease, I get the disease. I don't want to risk the vaccine. I just want to make sure that, I don't want to, I'll keep myself healthy. I'll just do it that way. Well, that's fine. If you lived in a world by yourself and you didn't have anybody else to worry about, that'd be great. Problem is, that's not the way it works. This disease is very contagious. And that's really what makes this disease dangerous. Don't get me wrong, it does have a higher death rate probably than the flu. I know a lot of that was the argument early on. It's no worse than the flu. It's probably slightly worse than the flu as far as the death rate, but the problem isn't just the death rate. The problem is how contagious it is. Because if you have a disease that's going to kill, any the numbers vary because we only know confirmed cases. Early on, there wasn't that much testing. We know we've had roughly 30 million confirmed cases so far, and it's killed more than 500,000. I don't think we've quite made it to 600,000 yet. But if you just want to base it off of those numbers, not including all the cases that we don't know about because we didn't test previously, we didn't have a test for it previously. But if you're looking at 600,000 roughly out of roughly 30 million people, that's the problem. Because think about it: if the disease wasn't as contagious, if only let's say only 10 million people had got it as opposed to 30 million, that would be one third the deaths. So we don't really have 200, which would still be bad. Don't get me wrong, but think about it. If we had the vaccine earlier, if everybody had been vaccinated earlier, that's 400,000 lives we could have saved. So we're not just doing this for ourselves. Don't get me wrong. I made sure I got the shot because I wanted to protect myself. But you're not just getting the shot to protect yourself. You're getting it to protect your grandma. You're getting it to protect your immunocompromised kids. You're getting it to protect your spouse. Because obviously, like I said, my health is relatively good. I had some health issues last year, but now I'm feeling good. But there are people around you in your life that are vulnerable. If you want to see your grandmother, if you want to hug your grandma or your parent, depending on how old you are, because we all have various ages and whatnot. But or like I said, if you're an older person, if you're like 70 years old, you are at a much higher risk for this. So please, like I said, if you have an opportunity to get your shot, please get your shot. Like I said, I completely understand if you're in the Black community and you say, hey, I'm concerned they're going to experiment. This is not an experiment. If they had a special Black vaccine, if they were giving one vaccine to Black people, I would not take that vaccine. I'd be like, no, you keep that. They're giving pretty much everybody the same vaccines. So it's not like they can just hey, we're going to give these people some sugar water, we're going to give these people some radium. That's not how we're going down. It's okay to be skeptical. It's okay to be reluctant. But when the information is out there, go seek out that information. I understand people saying I want more information, but don't say I want more information and then don't go get the information. The information is out there if you go get it. So please, if you have concerns, go get the information. Thing about it is, within the Black community, because I'm going to talk mostly to the Black community for this part right here. We were one of the hardest hit groups early on. The Latin community was hit pretty hard too, but we were hit pretty hard early on because we're less likely to have jobs where you can quote work from home. We had a lot of essential workers out there doing stuff. We had a lot of people, working at warehouses, working at meat packing plants, you know, doing delivery jobs. A lot of us didn't have the option working home. Luckily for me, while I was not able to quote work from home for the most part, I was able to at least, work out in the field where I'm mostly by myself almost every day. I spend most of my day in the car by myself or outside by myself. So I'm in a little bit better situation than a lot of people within the Black community as far as that goes, as far as exposure to different things. But it's very, very important, uh, if you want to protect the community, to get yourself vaccinated. And like I said, it's not like I said, if they wanted to quote poison us, there's all sorts of ways they're already poisoning us. They don't need a vaccine to do that. We already live in some of the most polluted areas. Our pipes have lead in them. And I'm not just talking about Flint or Detroit. I'm talking about pretty much any place. If you live in any community that's not a rich community, you live in any working class community, especially a minority based one, there's a good chance you have a lot of lead in your building, whether it be the lead paint, if paint's old, if you have lead in your pipes, in the water system, you might have lead in the soil. You probably live in the most polluted areas as far as you probably live closer to factories than a lot of the richer areas or a lot of the more wealthy white communities. So if they want to poison you, they're not doing it with this. There are other ways they're doing that. And that's like, don't get me wrong, that's definitely terrible. And that's, a little bit of a different discussion for a different day. But this is not how they're going to get you. So please, if you have a chance, by the way, if they were going to get you this way, they're getting themselves with this too. So if you have a chance to get vaccinated, and for the most part, most of the country now has, like, especially if you're old, if you're like older person or if you're middle aged, I think most of the places have already have the middle age covered. We live in Indiana, so Indiana's already dropped it down to roughly high school age of 16 or whatnot. So if you're old enough to get a driver's license in Indiana, you can get it. Please get it. I don't want our community decimated. And unfortunately, a lot of the world is already starting to open back up. Well, let me take that back. I shouldn't say the world. A lot of this country is starting to open back up. And it's kind of an irresponsible decision. Just as we're trying to start to get the numbers down, they try to open up too fast. In my book, don't get me wrong. I'm not saying businesses shouldn't be open, but we still should be wearing masks. We still should have like maybe some reduced capacity. We still should be practicing social distancing. But there's already states that are saying, hey, you're no longer required to wear a mask. If the business wants you to wear a mask, you have to wear it there. But everything's open, 100% capacity, and you're not required to wear a mask, at least not legally. So um, the faster we're doing this stuff, if you're not vaccinated and you have not already been exposed to it and either, was asymptomatic or, otherwise, had it and were treated for it, you're going to be in trouble. And I don't want you to be in trouble. So please, if you have a chance, get yourself treated.
Okay, on that similar subject. Okay, this is something that I notice I see a lot of people do. Just take a fine and for the love of God, I do not understand people who just cover their mouth only. For myself, it's like this. If you are skeptical of getting vaccinated, okay, like Dave, I understand, but still wear your mask over. You could breathe. My thing is people spend money on cigarettes, alcohol, Nikes, Mercedes, and anything else they want to spend their money on. But yet they have a problem with spending, I don't know, what, $20 on a freaking breathable mask. You
And
could do that.
And I do want to just clarify, even though we are in a room together, I have been vaccinated, so I'm considered 80% protected right now. I also have taken other measures too, so it's not like we're just, sitting in a little room, breathing together. I also have ion generators in every room, every significant room in my house. I also have air purifiers in my house, so I've really gone a long way. And those things aren't just for, COVID related issues, but they're also generally good to have make sure that you're breathing clean, healthy air, even if COVID wasn't a concern. So I want to make sure, people are aware. It's not like we're just saying, hey, go get vaccinated and, and we're not taking other precautions. There's other precautions you need to take too. Because again, it's not just about you. It's about
Everybody.
it's about everybody. And again, even if you're vaccinated, you still might be able to spread the disease to other people. So even though I am vaccinated, that's not why, that's not why we're sitting together and I'm not wearing a mask. He's not wearing a mask. I'm vaccinated, but also I have other things in the house to sort of take care of disease as well. So I did want to clear that up in case anybody's wondering. But yeah, if you're going to be out in public, especially if you're going to be around new people, definitely wear your mask and wear it properly. And I know a lot of people are talking about like because a lot of people, even if they wear the mask, the main protection of the mask is protecting other people from you. There's a difference between a mask and a filter. Most people, if you have like a regular cloth mask or you have a regular surgical mask, if somebody was literally talking to you face to face like this with no separation between you, If they have the disease and you don't, and you spend a significant amount of time talking to them more than a few minutes, there's a good chance they've infected you because all the stuff coming out is not going to be stopped by that mask. But the beautiful part is if we all wear masks and hopefully, socially distance yourself as well. But it works very, very well if you consider that. If you're, 6 feet apart from everybody and wearing a mask, there's almost no chance of you infecting each other if you're wearing your mask properly. The numbers are anywhere 75 to 90%. And I know you might still think, oh, there's still a 25 to 10% chance, but I would much rather have a 10 to 25% chance of infection versus a almost 100%. Because again, this disease is not like they kept saying it's like the flu. It's not because of the contagion. The average person that gets this disease will infect 2 or 3 more people. They say 2.5. Obviously, you can't infect a half a person, but that means if I get the disease, I'm infecting 2. If he gets it, he's infecting 3. Or if I get it, I'm infecting 3, and then he's infecting 2. That's the way it works. That's why the disease is so dangerous. Not just because it's deadly to everybody get it. Most people who get it will either, they might be sick for a day. They might even realize they have it. But that's not the problem. The problem is the fact that they will spread it to 2 or 3 other people. And while they spread it to those 2 or 3 other people, out of those, once you start getting up to those multiple numbers of people, you're just destined to have a lot of people who are more vulnerable within that group get sick and either die or have long-term consequences. Because that's the other thing. People say, well, there's a low risk of death. If you consider 500,000 or 600,000 people out of 300 million a low risk, that's still kind of terrible. 500,000, 500,000 Americans dead. Think about that.
Not good.
That's a terrible number. But if you say, okay, well, it's still a small percent of the people that got it. Well, yeah, that's still a relatively small percent of the people. But death is not the only consequence. There's a lot of people what you call long haulers. There's a lot of people who still have symptoms, months and months later. There's people who have lost their sense of taste. I know a lot of people are like, well, that's not so bad if you think about it. Yeah, for a lot of people, eating and enjoying eating is very important to them. So if you end up losing your sense of taste, you end up losing your sense of smell. How can you enjoy food? That significantly affects not just your day-to-day life, your ability to maintain your current weight. It's going to affect your ability to enjoy time with your family. Because think about how many times you have, you have Thanksgiving dinner, you have Christmas dinner. If you don't enjoy that, sure, you still can enjoy hanging out with your family, but that's a big part of the experience. And that part of the experience is ruined for you. So there are more things to worry about just in dying. There's dying. There's long-term cost. There's the medical bill you're gonna have to pay if you're uninsured. There's there's the fact that if you're uninsured, like I said, if you're not roughly dying, that's the only time they have to treat you. If you're like very, very sick, but you're not going to die, they just basically have to patch you up and put you, and they can send you on your way.
So in other words, they just have to legally treat.
They have to make sure you don't die, but that's about the limit of what they have to do.
So so it's pretty much okay. We look at you, we examine you, and then send you on your way
Yep, put some tussin on it.
with the bill.
Exactly. Now, again, if you don't have insurance, there's a good chance you're not going to be able to pay the bill, but they're going to keep chasing you for the next 7 years at least. And then if you actually should reach a point in your life within that next 7 years where you can have the money, they're still looking for you. So you still might be out of pocket at the end. So,
And don't forget that interest.
yep, interest and fees and collection agencies coming after you, and
Why go through this?
affecting your ability to get a car loan, ability to get a mortgage, ability to get credit in general. There's just so many negative consequences from an expensive medical bill. So, and then there's a lot of companies that don't want you to be able to get out of that. So that's a separate argument. They don't want you to they don't want you to be able to file bankruptcy too easy. And they did make it harder a few years ago. So
see, that would be a topic for another show. But I would like to thank my man King David for giving us this this very important information for everyone. And I encourage everyone to support King David in his endeavors. So as we are wrapping up, if you want to end it with some of your future endeavors, Mike is yours.
Okay. Thank you, Brian. I am King David Lane. That's King David Lane on pretty much every major social media platform. So give me a like on my friend request, and I'll give you a return. Also, like King David Comedy. That's comedy with a K. King David Comedy on most major social media platforms. If you do happen to live in the Northwest Indiana area, I do have some local things that I do here as well. Uh, I play rugby with the Northwest Indiana Reapers. We just united the Exiles and Misfits rugby clubs in our area, so now we are the Reapers as a united team. So come check us out. If COVID protocols allow, come check us out for a home game. We play throughout Chicagoland, Michigan, Indiana for the most part. If you happen to like local comedy at Deep Performance Comedy Theater every Wednesday night, I host my uh, King David Lane's open comedy mic. So that's Wednesday nights. Doors open at 7. That's Central Time, and then the show starts around 8. At that, I'm also with Disposable Theater. So I do improv with Disposable Theater. We perform throughout Northwest Indiana, Illinois, Chicagoland, Michigan as well. So all that stuff, pretty much we all have Facebook pages and we all have Twitter accounts. So you can look for that as well. Disposable Improv is our Facebook page. And again, like I mentioned earlier, King David Lane and King David Comments. So thanks a lot for listening. And back to you, Brian.
Well, with that being said, okay, you could like, share, please subscribe, and here to the message of your man Brian Hunter. This is King David Lane, and we are out.
Yep, King David Lane is on YouTube too. So like me there too.